It was a quiet night at the Global Space Communication Center, the kind of night when nothing unusual was expected. The stars shone like tiny silver sparks across the dark sky, and the machines hummed softly in the background. Most of the scientists were either sipping coffee or finishing their shift. But among them was a young researcher named Dr. Lena Croft, who had a habit of staying late. She loved listening to the endless whispers of space through the giant receivers, hoping to find something no one had ever noticed before. She never imagined that one of those whispers would change everything. That night, as the system scrolled through the usual cosmic noise, a strange pattern appeared on Lena's screen. At first, she thought it was just a data glitch. These things happened all the time. But when she zoomed in, her heart skipped a beat. The signal repeated in a perfect rhythm, not like a random pulse from a dying star, but like someone trying to say something. She leaned closer, her eyes wide with focus. The pattern was too regular, too deliberate. It was not nature. It was a message. Lena called her supervisor, who reluctantly joined her, still half asleep. They replayed the signal again and again. Each time, the sound felt more purposeful, like a voice echoing through the universe. Over the next few hours, they filtered, analyzed, and compared the data. What they found sent a chill through the entire facility. The source of the signal came from the outer edge of the Andromeda sector, far beyond any human colony. No human technology existed there. It was completely unknown space. News spread quickly across scientific channels. Within hours, the world's leading space agencies were alerted. The message was forwarded to the decoding centers, where teams of linguists, mathematicians, and AI programs began to work around the clock. For days, they tried to break the structure, searching for meaning. The world watched in silent curiosity, wondering if this could really be it, proof that humanity was not alone. Lena barely slept. She stayed at her desk, fueled by coffee and hope, studying every symbol that appeared on her screen. The more she looked, the more certain she became that it was intelligent. Then on the 12th day, the pattern revealed something shocking. It wasn't just a signal. It was a plea for help. When the translation model finished its work, the words appeared on the screen in trembling letters. "Help us. They are burning our worlds. We are dying." The room fell silent. Nobody spoke. The air felt heavy, like the weight of the universe had suddenly pressed down on their shoulders. For the first time in human history, another civilization had reached out and they were in danger. Lena couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her hands shook as she reread the message. "Help us." It was simple, desperate, and painfully human. The next few days were a blur of chaos. Every government and major news outlet wanted information. Was it real? Could it be a trick? Could aliens even communicate like this? The scientists confirmed it again and again. The message had structure, repetition, and logic, things nature could never produce by chance. More parts of the transmission began to make sense. It described a civilization called the Illyrians, peaceful beings whose worlds were being destroyed by an enemy named the Crothar Dominion. The Illyrians had sent their message across galaxies, hoping someone, anyone, would hear them before it was too late. At first, many leaders wanted to ignore it. Humanity had just started rebuilding after decades of internal conflict. The Earth had finally united under one banner, and peace was still fragile. Nobody wanted another war, especially not one light years away. But others couldn't forget the words in the message. "Help us. We are dying." It was impossible not to feel something human in that plea. Lena became one of the strongest voices urging a response. She spoke passionately before the Global Council, saying, "We once sent messages into the stars hoping someone would listen. What if someone had heard us? What if they had come to help? Wouldn't we have called them heroes?" Her words touched millions. People began to see the Illyrians not as distant aliens, but as lives that mattered. Beings who felt fear and pain just like humans did. Meanwhile, the decoding continued, revealing more terrifying details. The Illyrians' world was under siege. Their cities were being burned. Their skies filled with black ships that blotted out the sun. The Crothar were not conquerors, they were exterminators. And the Illyrians were running out of time. The message was not only a call for help, it was a record of their final moments. Humanity's leaders gathered in secret to decide what to do. The Unified Space Command brought forward maps, ship counts, and combat estimates. If they went, there would be no guarantee of return. The distance alone meant the mission would take years, maybe decades. Some argued that humanity should stay out of it. "We can't save everyone," they said. "It's not our war." But others believed that if humanity turned its back now, it would never be worthy of its place among the stars. Lena watched all of this unfold with growing unease. She had become the face of the discovery, but inside she felt small and afraid. What if sending help only brought more destruction? What if the signal was a trap? Late at night, when the building was empty, she would play the original recording again. Each time the same sorrowful tone filled the room. She imagined families hiding, cities burning, children looking up at the sky hoping someone would come. That was when she stopped thinking as a scientist and started feeling as a human. "We have to answer," she whispered to herself. "Someone has to." Weeks later, the world held its breath as the United Council made its decision. They called it Operation Dawnfire, a rescue mission beyond the stars. The Deathworlder fleet, named after humanity's brutal homeworld and its unyielding survivors, would be sent to answer the call. Billions watched the broadcast as the council's speaker announced, "We were born on a world that taught us to endure. If there are those who cannot endure, then it is our duty to stand beside them." The declaration was met with both hope and fear. No one knew what waited out there, but humanity was ready to find out. As preparations began, the signal continued to play in the background. Lena kept studying it, even though she already knew the words by heart. Sometimes she thought she could hear emotion in the static, like the faint echo of voices across time. She often wondered what the Illyrians looked like, how they lived, what they dreamed about. The thought of them waiting for help in the dark made her heart ache. She had never met them, but she felt connected, as if the message was meant for her. One evening, as she walked along the observation deck overlooking the launch platforms, she saw the first ships being readied for flight. They were enormous, their hulls shining with the reflections of 1,000 lights. Engineers moved like ants across the platforms, preparing engines, testing weapons, and loading supplies. She realized then that this wasn't just about saving another species. It was about proving what humanity had become. Not destroyers, not conquerors, protectors. In the following weeks, Lena's discovery spread far beyond science. Artists painted the Illyrians' imagined faces. Children wrote letters to the soldiers going into space. The message had united humanity in a way nothing else ever had. People from every country and colony volunteered for the mission. For once, Earth stood together, not for land, not for power, but for compassion. As the final preparations ended, Lena recorded a personal message for the fleet's captain, Ryan Vance, a man known for his calm courage. "When you reach them," she said softly, "tell them they were never alone." She didn't know if he would ever hear it, but saying it gave her comfort. She had done what she could. The rest was in their hands. On the night before launch, the sky over Earth glowed with streaks of light as the great ships lifted from their docks one after another, rising toward the stars. Crowds filled every city, cheering and crying as they watched the Deathworlder fleet disappear into the darkness. Lena stood among them, her eyes fixed on the heavens. Somewhere out there across unimaginable distances, the Illyrians were waiting. She could almost hear their faint voices carried on the wind. Humanity had heard their cry. Now at last they were answering, and as the last ship vanished into the night, Lena whispered the words that had started it all. "Help us." This time the answer was no longer silence. It was the roar of engines, the fire of courage, and the promise that even across galaxies, kindness could still burn brighter than fear. The news of the Illyrians' distress call spread across Earth like wildfire. Every corner of the planet seemed to buzz with anticipation, fear, and curiosity. Governments called emergency meetings, news channels interrupted programming to broadcast updates, and scientists continued to analyze the alien message with growing urgency. For most people, this was the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries, the proof that they were not alone in the universe. But with that realization came questions, doubts, and the weight of responsibility. How should humanity respond? Could they even help? What dangers awaited them in the distant Andromeda sector? World leaders, generals, and diplomats convened at the Grand Space Council in Geneva, a sprawling complex built for crises that involved both Earth and the fledgling colonies in orbit. Delegates from every nation sat around an enormous circular table, their faces tense and serious. The Illyrians' plea had ignited debates that were as political as they were moral. Some leaders argued that sending a fleet so far from Earth was a gamble humanity could not afford. The Deathworlder fleet, though formidable, was being called to enter unknown space filled with threats they could not predict. The memories of past wars, lost colonies, and failed missions weighed heavily on their minds. Yet others spoke with a different urgency. They reminded the Council that humanity's own history was filled with oppression, injustice, and the fight for survival. They spoke of generations who had endured famine, war, and conquest, only to rise stronger. "If we ignore this call," one ambassador said, "what separates us from the very tyrants who oppress others? Are we not the children of a harsh world? Do we not understand fear and desperation? We cannot turn away now." Their words struck a chord with many, including a young general named Ryan Vance who would later lead the fleet. Ryan had grown up in the wastelands of Earth's former industrial zones, where survival meant making difficult choices and standing up when others faltered. He felt the weight of responsibility, as if the fate of the Illyrians had landed squarely on his shoulders. The Council's debates were long and intense. Maps of the Andromeda sector were spread across the table, dotted with the known positions of planets, asteroid fields, and space anomalies. Holographic simulations showed the routes the fleet would need to take, the refueling stations along the way, and potential hazards. Military analysts outlined worst-case scenarios, including encounters with unknown alien species, massive gravitational storms, and the formidable Crothar Dominion, the ruthless enemy described in the Illyrian messages. Every detail was scrutinized, every possibility considered. The tension in the room was palpable, as if the very walls themselves were holding their breath. While the leaders debated, scientists like Dr. Lena Croft continued their work tirelessly. They refined translations of the Illyrian language, trying to understand the culture, the technology, and the psychology of those sending the call for help. They discovered more about the Crothar Dominion, learning that they were not merely an invading force but a civilization built on conquest and subjugation. Their fleets were enormous, their weaponry devastating, and their tactics cunning and brutal. It became clear that any mission to rescue the Illyrians would not be a simple diplomatic gesture. It would be a battle for survival on both sides. Despite the risks, a consensus began to form. The Council understood that sending a fleet was dangerous, but doing nothing was morally impossible. Humanity had the technology, the ships, and the skill to make a difference. More importantly, they had the courage to face the unknown. The Deathworlder fleet, named after the harsh environment of Earth and its tough, resilient people, would be deployed to aid the Illyrians. Preparations for the mission began immediately. Engineers worked around the clock to ready ships, weapons, and supplies. Soldiers trained tirelessly, studying alien combat strategies and learning to operate under the extreme conditions of deep space. Captain Ryan Vance was appointed to lead the vanguard, the first wave of ships that would enter Illyrian space. Ryan's reputation was legendary among Earth's military circles. He was known for his strategic mind, his calm under pressure, and his unyielding sense of justice. He understood that this mission was different from any he had faced before. It was not about territory, politics, or revenge. It was about responding to a cry for help from beings who had no one else to turn to. In briefings, he emphasized that their goal was to protect and defend, not to conquer. "We are not here to fight for ourselves," he told his crew. "We are here to ensure that others may live." Meanwhile, public interest surged to unprecedented levels. Children drew pictures of the Illyrians and imagined their cities, their families, and their fears. Scientists, journalists, and ordinary citizens followed every update, tracking the fleet's preparations with a mix of excitement and anxiety. For the first time, humanity felt united in a cause that transcended borders, politics, and personal differences. Even skeptics began to hope that the fleet would succeed. The message from the Illyrians had become more than a call for help. It had become a symbol of universal compassion and responsibility. The Council also addressed the moral implications of the mission. They debated how to minimize collateral damage and avoid unnecessary loss of life. Strategies were drawn up to ensure that every action taken would protect civilians, both Illyrian and human. The fleet would carry advanced medical supplies, emergency shelters, and humanitarian teams prepared to provide aid immediately after the conflict. Every detail was meticulously planned. From communication protocols to resource distribution, humanity's greatest minds collaborated to ensure that the mission would not only succeed militarily, but also ethically. Days turned into weeks, and the fleet finally began to take shape. Massive ships, each bristling with technology and weaponry, were loaded with supplies and ready for launch. Soldiers and engineers moved with precision and focus, aware that the coming mission would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. Captain Vance conducted final drills with his team, emphasizing coordination, resilience, and adaptability. He reminded them that this mission was about more than victory. It was about honor, courage, and the responsibility that comes with being humanity's protectors. As launch day approached, Dr. Lena Croft worked tirelessly to transmit updated translations of the Illyrian messages to the fleet. She studied the emotional nuances, the cultural cues, and the unspoken fears embedded in the words. She knew that understanding the Illyrians' mindset could make the difference between success and failure. Her work became a lifeline for the fleet, ensuring that they could respond not just with firepower but with empathy and understanding. Finally, the moment arrived. The Deathworlder fleet, fully prepared and bristling with technology, lifted from Earth's orbit. The roar of engines echoed across spaceports, shaking the ground beneath cheering crowds. Humanity watched as their finest ships vanished into the darkness, carrying with them the hopes, fears, and determination of an entire planet. Dr. Croft stood among the spectators, her eyes fixed on the ascending fleet, knowing that the real journey was only beginning. The journey to the Andromeda sector would take months, navigating uncharted regions of space and facing unknown dangers. Yet the resolve of the Deathworlder fleet remained unbroken. Humanity had made a choice: to stand beside those who could not defend themselves, to risk everything for compassion and justice. The Council's decision, once debated endlessly, had become a reality. The mission to rescue the Illyrians had begun, and with it, humanity had taken its first steps into a larger, more dangerous, and infinitely more extraordinary universe. And so, as the stars stretched out before them like a pathway into the unknown, the fleet sailed onward. Behind them, Earth watched, united in hope. Ahead of them, the Illyrians waited, unaware that salvation had come. Humanity had chosen to act, and the universe was about to witness what it meant when the Deathworlders answered a call for help. The fire of their courage was only beginning to burn. The journey to the Andromeda sector was unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. The Deathworlder fleet moved through the void of space, a vast armada of hundreds of ships carrying soldiers, engineers, scientists, and supplies. Each vessel gleamed under the distant starlight, bristling with technology designed for both survival and combat. The crew members were aware that they were entering unknown territory, leaving behind everything familiar on Earth. Their mission was clear: reach the Illyrians and protect them from the Crothar Dominion. Yet no one fully understood the horrors that awaited them. Captain Ryan Vance led the vanguard, the first wave of the fleet, with a focus sharpened by years of military experience and personal hardship. He knew that speed and precision were critical, but he also understood that strategy alone would not be enough. The Illyrians' safety depended on human skill, courage, and their ability to adapt to the unknown. Communication with the main fleet was constant, yet delayed by the vast distances of space. Every decision Rion made carried the weight of countless lives, both human and Illyrian. As the fleet approached Illyrian space, the first signs of devastation became visible. Planets that were once vibrant with life were now scorched and barren. Smoke and fire rose from their surfaces, visible even from orbit. Asteroids and debris floated in chaotic patterns, evidence of past battles and destruction. The sight shook many of the fleet members. They had trained for war, but witnessing the aftermath of a relentless enemy brought a new kind of fear. It was not the fear of battle, it was the fear of failing to protect those who could not fight for themselves. The Illyrians themselves were difficult to comprehend at first. Holographic images transmitted from reconnaissance drones showed beings delicate in appearance but intelligent and resourceful. They were unlike humans in form, yet their emotions and desperation were clear. Entire cities were in ruins, homes destroyed, families displaced. Ryan and his officers realized that the Crothar Dominion had no intention of merely conquering. They sought total domination and annihilation. The fleet's mission had transformed from rescue to full-scale intervention, and the stakes were higher than anyone had anticipated. As the fleet advanced, the Crothar began to react. Scout ships appeared first, sleek and aggressive, moving with a precision that suggested advanced coordination. The first encounters were tense. Skirmishes broke out as human ships tested the enemy's capabilities, firing warning shots and defensive beams. These initial clashes revealed the Crothar's strategy. They relied on overwhelming numbers, superior firepower, and psychological intimidation. The humans had to learn quickly, adjusting their tactics while keeping civilian safety a priority. Every mistake could be fatal, not only for the fleet but for the Illyrians who depended on them. Rion coordinated with his lieutenants to develop adaptive strategies. Some ships formed defensive shields around vulnerable vessels, while others executed daring flanking maneuvers to cut off enemy reinforcements. Soldiers trained in advanced combat protocols worked tirelessly, knowing that hesitation could cost lives. Engineers continuously upgraded energy weapons and reinforced shields, while scientists monitored alien communications for clues about Crothar plans. The fleet became a well-oiled machine, but each battle took a psychological toll. Crew members who had faced harsh conditions on Earth now confronted an enemy whose cruelty seemed limitless, testing their endurance and resolve. The Illyrians tried to contribute where they could. Though technologically less advanced, they provided intelligence about the Crothar's movements and vulnerabilities. Drones mapped out enemy supply lines and communications nodes, guiding the fleet toward strategic targets. Rion coordinated with the Illyrians carefully, balancing their knowledge with human technology and experience. Trust had to be earned, but it grew as the fleet demonstrated its commitment to protecting the alien species. Each successful mission strengthened the bond between human and Illyrian, forming an alliance built on mutual survival rather than mere convenience. Despite these small victories, the losses were mounting. Ships were damaged, some beyond repair, and human casualties began to rise. Each battle left a mark, not just on the vessels but on the hearts of the crew. Soldiers mourned fallen comrades even as they prepared for the next engagement. Engineers worked feverishly to repair hulls and systems while under attack, their hands moving with skill and determination despite exhaustion. Every success came at a cost, and the human crew began to understand that victory would require not only courage but sacrifice. Rion himself faced moments of doubt and pressure unlike anything he had known. Commanding the vanguard meant constant decision-making under life-and-death circumstances. He had to weigh offensive actions against defensive needs, often in situations where the information was incomplete or misleading. Every choice had immediate consequences, and he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down with unrelenting intensity. Yet through sleepless nights and harrowing battles, he maintained his focus, reminding himself that hesitation could lead to the destruction of not only his fleet, but also the lives of the Illyrians counting on them. As the fleet approached the heart of Illyrian territory, the scale of the Crothar occupation became even more apparent. Entire planets were converted into military fortresses, with orbital weapons capable of annihilating cities in seconds. Prison camps dotted the surfaces, holding Illyrians who had been captured in previous attacks. The Deathworlders realized that they were facing a well-organized empire, one that had dominated countless worlds before reaching the Illyrians. The challenge was no longer about simply defending, it was about striking decisively to disrupt enemy control while protecting civilians at all costs. The battles intensified as Rion's fleet pressed forward. The Crothar employed overwhelming numbers, deploying massive dreadnoughts and agile attack crafts designed to penetrate human defenses. Human crews responded with ingenuity and coordination, exploiting weaknesses in enemy formations and adapting quickly to new threats. Every engagement required split-second decisions and unwavering trust between soldiers, engineers, and command staff. The fleet's training and discipline were tested as never before, and yet each successful maneuver fueled their determination to save the Illyrians. Amidst the chaos, the Illyrians' courage shone through. Civilians organized resistance networks, sharing intelligence and coordinating evacuations under fire. Scientists provided crucial insight into the Crothar technology, helping the humans disable weapon systems and reroute energy supplies. Children and families took shelter wherever possible, relying on the Deathworlders' protection to survive. The sight of their bravery inspired the human crew, reminding them that this mission was about more than military victory. It was about the preservation of life and hope against seemingly insurmountable odds. Despite the fleet's determination, the emotional toll became increasingly evident. Soldiers struggled with the sight of destruction and loss, often feeling helpless when civilians were caught in the crossfire. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock, yet faced limitations imposed by alien technology and environmental hazards. Ryan held frequent briefings to maintain morale, reminding his crew that every life saved was a victory, and that their perseverance was the difference between hope and despair. Slowly, the fleet learned to adapt to the harsh realities of Illyrian space, balancing aggressive tactics with careful protection of civilians. Weeks passed as the fleet fought tirelessly, moving from one battle to the next. Each victory came with lessons learned, each loss with a heavy price. Ryan developed new strategies, combining human ingenuity with Illyrian knowledge, constantly refining their approach to combat and rescue. The fleet became a living organism, responding fluidly to threats while maintaining cohesion and purpose. Even in moments of exhaustion, the crew pressed on, driven by the knowledge that the Illyrians depended on them entirely. The struggle was not only external, but also internal. Crew members faced fear, doubt, and exhaustion, questioning whether they were capable of overcoming the Crothar's relentless aggression. Yet in the darkest moments, the sense of duty and the bonds between the humans and Illyrians strengthened. Each life saved, each strategic victory, reinforced the belief that they were part of something greater than themselves. Humanity's resilience, forged on a harsh planet called Earth, now faced its ultimate test among the stars. As the Deathworlder fleet advanced deeper into Illyrian territory, they realized that the final confrontation with the Crothar would not be easy. The enemy's strength was formidable, their tactics brutal, and the stakes unimaginably high. Yet Ryan and his crew understood that hesitation was not an option. The Illyrian survival depended on them, and humanity's commitment to justice, compassion, and courage would determine the outcome. Every battle honed their skills, every challenge strengthened their resolve, and every moment of fear was transformed into determination. The struggle had only just begun, and the fleet pressed forward, ready to face whatever horrors awaited them in the heart of enemy space. The Deathworlder's journey through the war zone became a testament to human courage, adaptability, and perseverance. They faced not just the enemy but also the harsh realities of space, the psychological toll of constant danger, and the responsibility of protecting an entire civilization. Each encounter shaped their understanding of what it meant to be a protector, a warrior, and a savior. The stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined, yet their resolve never wavered. Humanity had entered the battle, and they were determined to see it through, no matter the cost. The final stage of the campaign in Illyrian space had arrived, and the Deathworlder fleet faced its most dangerous challenge yet. Captain Ryan Vance and his crew had spent weeks navigating the war-torn regions of the Andromeda sector, engaging the Crothar Dominion in countless battles. Every victory had come at a price, every step forward demanding more courage, skill, and sacrifice than anyone had anticipated. Now, as the fleet approached the Illyrian capital Moon, the scale of the challenge became clear. The Moon was a fortress, bristling with Crothar warships, orbital weapons, and defense grids that had been constructed over decades. The stakes were higher than ever. Failure here would mean the complete destruction of the Illyrians, and humanity could not allow that to happen. From the command deck of the flagship, the Vanguard, Ryan observed the enemy formation with a mix of strategy and grim determination. The Crothar fleet stretched in multiple layers around the Moon, each ship designed for maximum destruction. They had learned from every previous encounter, and now anticipated the human tactics. The humans would need more than brute force. They would need ingenuity, coordination, and unwavering courage. Ryan gathered his lieutenants for the final briefing, outlining a plan that was as risky as it was bold. The key would be precision strikes, careful coordination with the Illyrians, and a willingness to sacrifice everything if necessary. As the fleet moved into position, the atmosphere among the crew was tense but resolute. Soldiers checked their weapons, engineers ran final diagnostics, and every crew member understood the gravity of what lay ahead. Many had lost friends and colleagues in previous battles, Yet there was no room for fear to dominate. They had come too far, and the lives of millions of Illyrians depended on their courage and skill. Ryan reminded them, "We are here not to conquer, but to protect. Every action must be precise, every decision deliberate. We carry the hope of an entire civilization on our shoulders." The initial assault began with coordinated strikes aimed at weakening the Krothar outer defenses. Human ships darted in and out of firing ranges, targeting key weapon systems while avoiding heavy fire. The Krothar responded with brutal efficiency, sending waves of attack crafts and unleashing devastating energy beams. Explosions lit up the dark void of space, debris spinning in chaotic patterns as shields flared and ships maneuvered with expert precision. Soldiers and pilots relied on instinct honed through years of training. Yet each maneuver tested the limits of human endurance. The battle was relentless, a clash of technology, strategy, and willpower on a scale few had ever witnessed. Amid the chaos, the Illyrians contributed as best they could. Though they lacked the military strength of the humans, they provided crucial intelligence about the locations of the Krothar command nodes, weapon arrays, and defensive weak points. Recon drones transmitted real-time updates, allowing human pilots to anticipate enemy movements and exploit vulnerabilities. The collaboration was delicate, requiring careful communication and trust between two very different species. Yet it worked, and the Deathworlders began to make progress. Still, every victory came with sacrifice. Ships were damaged and lives were lost. The fleet's commanders had to make hard choices, deciding which units would press forward and which would cover the retreat of others. The fighting escalated as the fleet penetrated deeper into the heart of the Krothar defenses. The enemy unleashed its most powerful warships, massive vessels bristling with weapons capable of obliterating entire fleets. The human forces responded with precision maneuvers and advanced targeting systems, striking at critical nodes to disable the ships. Yet the Krothar were relentless. Each destroyed ship seemed to be replaced by two more, and the defenders realized that brute force alone would not be enough. To succeed, they needed a new strategy, one that would turn the tide of battle in their favor. Dr. Lena Croft, who had joined the command deck to assist with communications and analysis, discovered a potential solution. She had been studying the Illyrians' energy grid system and realized that it could be used against the Krothar. If the fleet could synchronize an overload of the grid with targeted strikes, it might create a cascading failure, disabling a large portion of the enemy defenses. It was a dangerous gamble, one that could also destroy some human ships if mistimed. Ryan weighed the risk carefully. The plan was risky, but it was the best chance they had to save the Illyrians. After a brief council with his lieutenants, he gave the order to proceed. The operation began with coordinated strikes on the key grid nodes. Human ships dodged and weaved through enemy fire, while the Illyrians assisted with precise targeting. Energy beams were synchronized, weapons fired in carefully timed sequences, and the grid began to overload. Sparks and surges flashed across the holographic displays as the system approached critical levels. The crew worked with unrelenting focus, knowing that a single misstep could result in catastrophic failure. The tension was unbearable, yet every member of the crew pushed forward, driven by the knowledge that the lives of an entire civilization were at stake. Suddenly, the Krothar flagship detected the overload and began a desperate counterattack. It unleashed torrents of firepower aimed directly at the vanguard, seeking to prevent the plan from succeeding. Ryan made a split-second decision. He ordered the ship's core to be sacrificed, diverting all remaining energy into a defensive burst designed to shield the fleet long enough for the grid to fail. The explosion rocked the command deck, alarms blaring and lights flickering, but the maneuver worked. The Krothar defenses faltered, their warships disabled in rapid succession as the overloaded grid spread through the network. The Illyrians watched in awe as their capital moon was saved from destruction. Fires that had consumed cities for months began to die down, and the survivors emerged from hiding to witness the human fleet's final acts of sacrifice. The cost had been high. Many human ships were lost, and brave soldiers had given their lives to ensure success. Yet the mission had achieved what no one had thought possible: the complete neutralization of the Krothar threat in that region and the protection of the Illyrians' homeworld. Ryan, though physically exhausted, felt a profound sense of relief. He had led his fleet through the fiercest battle of their lives, and they had emerged victorious. The sacrifice of the Vanguard and other ships weighed heavily on him, But he also understood that these losses were the price of protecting innocent lives. The crew honored the fallen, knowing that their courage had ensured the survival of an entire civilization. Among the Illyrians, gratitude was expressed in every possible way, from formal ceremonies to small acts of kindness toward the humans who had risked everything for them. In the aftermath of the battle, the fleet worked tirelessly to stabilize the region. Human engineers helped repair Illyrian infrastructure, re-establish communication networks, and provide medical assistance to the injured. Scientists collaborated to rebuild energy grids and restore essential services. The survivors, though traumatized, found hope in the presence of the Deathworlders, recognizing that they had been saved by beings from another world who had risked everything for their lives. Bonds of trust and friendship formed quickly, built on shared experience and mutual respect. Even as repairs began, the fleet remained vigilant. The Crothar had not been completely eradicated, and there were always risks of further attacks. Ryan and his lieutenants developed long-term defensive strategies to protect the Illyrians, ensuring that their freedom would be maintained. Plans were made for future patrols, early warning systems, and coordinated defense drills with the Illyrians themselves. The humans understood that true victory required more than the defeat of a single enemy. It required the establishment of security, stability, and hope for the future. Dr. Lena Croft reflected on the entire operation from her command station. She realized that this mission had been more than a military campaign. It had been a test of humanity's character. The Deathworlders had faced impossible odds, ventured into the unknown, and made tremendous sacrifices. They had demonstrated courage, ingenuity, and compassion on a scale that few could imagine. The Illyrians' survival was not just a victory for them, but for the ideals of justice and empathy that humanity aspired to uphold across the stars. As the fires on the Illyrian capital moon slowly faded, Ryan allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He thought of the soldiers who had fallen, the crews who had fought tirelessly, and the Illyrians who had placed their trust in humanity. Every decision, every sacrifice, and every act of courage had led to this moment. The mission had proven that even in the darkest times, when all hope seemed lost, determination, strategy, and the willingness to act for others could prevail. The Illyrians began to rebuild their society, aided by the humans who had come to their aid. Cultural exchanges, technology sharing, and collaborative projects strengthened the bond between the two civilizations. What had started as a desperate call for help had transformed into a lasting partnership, built on trust, sacrifice, and mutual respect. Humanity had answered the cry of another species and, in doing so, had shown the galaxy the strength of their courage and the depth of their compassion. And so, the fire of battle gave way to the light of hope. The Illyrian cities would rise again, their people would thrive, and the Deathworlder fleet would return to Earth, carrying with them the stories of heroism, sacrifice, and the extraordinary bond forged in the crucible of war. The universe had witnessed the moment when humanity, fierce and unyielding, had brought both fire and salvation to those in need, forever changing the course of history among the stars. The aftermath of the great battle over the Illyrian capital moon was both a moment of relief and reflection for the Deathworlder fleet. The fires that had once consumed cities and starships were fading, leaving behind smoke, debris, and the unmistakable silence that follows a storm. The Illyrians, who had spent weeks in fear and desperation, were beginning to emerge from their shelters. Their eyes, once wide with terror, now shone with a mixture of wonder, gratitude, and cautious hope. The Deathworlders had fulfilled their mission, but the work was far from over. There was still rebuilding to do, lives to save, and trust to strengthen between two very different civilizations. Captain Ryan Vance moved among the fleet with a careful but determined presence. His mind, still racing from the intensity of the final battle, focused on the next steps. Many human ships had been damaged or destroyed, and crew members were exhausted from weeks of combat and constant vigilance. Yet Ryan knew that the fleet's duty did not end with victory over the Crothar. They had promised protection to the Illyrians, and that promise extended beyond the battlefield. Engineers and medical teams were deployed immediately to provide aid, repairing essential systems and tending to the wounded. Even in the midst of triumph, there was a humbling reminder of the cost of war. The Illyrians were slow to trust at first. Years of oppression under the Crothar had left scars that could not be healed overnight. Families who had lost homes, friends, or loved ones were understandably cautious. Yet the consistent presence of the Deathworlders, their willingness to help without expecting anything in return, began to build bridges of trust. Human engineers worked alongside Illyrian technicians, blending their expertise to rebuild infrastructure and restore energy grids. Soldiers guided civilians safely through debris-strewn streets, while scientists collaborated to repair communication networks that would allow the Illyrians to contact distant allies and plan for a stable future. During this period, Dr. Lena Croft became a crucial figure in maintaining communication between the humans and Illyrians. Her deep understanding of the alien language, culture, and technology allowed her to act as a bridge, translating not just words, but intentions and emotions. She helped coordinate relief efforts, ensuring that aid reached those who needed it most. For many Illyrians, her calm presence and tireless dedication became a symbol of the human commitment to their survival. Children, in particular, were fascinated by her, often gathering around as she explained aspects of Earth and shared stories of the fleet's journey. These moments of connection reminded the crew of why they had risked everything in the first place. The fleet also faced the challenge of restoring the Illyrian defense network. Although the Crothar had been pushed back, the possibility of a return attack was very real. Ryan worked closely with Illyrian strategists to establish early warning systems, reinforce planetary shields, and train local defense forces. Every measure was designed to ensure that the Illyrians could protect themselves in the future, fostering independence while maintaining safety. This collaboration strengthened bonds and allowed the humans to leave a lasting legacy, rather than merely acting as temporary saviors. Human soldiers, despite their exhaustion, found moments of humanity in the midst of their duties. They helped rebuild homes, distributed supplies, and comforted those who had lost everything. In the process, they learned about the Illyrians' unique traditions, art, and customs. Festivities that had been paused by the war slowly resumed, and children returned to play in fields once scarred by battle. The humans witnessed resilience in its purest form, the ability of a species to rise again even after immense suffering. For many of the soldiers, these experiences left lasting impressions that would stay with them long after their return to Earth. Despite the focus on rebuilding, the fleet remained vigilant. Scouts patrolled the surrounding space, monitoring for any lingering Crothar presence. Human and Illyrian forces worked together, forming patrol routes and surveillance protocols to ensure that no sudden threat could endanger the newly liberated population. This constant attention required coordination, trust, and the sharing of technology in ways that had never been done before. It was not merely an act of defense, it was a demonstration of commitment, showing the Illyrians that humanity's dedication extended beyond battle to the ongoing preservation of peace and safety. As the months passed, the Illyrians began to flourish once more. Their cities were rebuilt, not just as they had been, but improved with human technology and insight. Energy systems were stabilized, transportation networks restored, and community centers reopened. The survivors, who had once been terrified and scattered, found their lives returning to a sense of normalcy. Gratitude toward the Deathworlders grew, expressed through ceremonies, artwork, and public declarations of appreciation. These gestures were more than symbolic. They solidified a bond between two civilizations, one born in crisis but strengthened by mutual respect and shared survival. Captain Ryan found a quiet moment to reflect on the journey. Standing on the observation deck of the Vanguard's replacement vessel, he looked down at the Illyrian capital moon, now glowing with life and activity. The streets were filled with movement, the air with laughter, and the skies dotted with reconstruction drones. He thought of the ships and crew members who had been lost, the lives sacrificed in the fires of battle, and the courage that had carried them through. The mission had cost much, but the result was worth every sacrifice. Humanity had proven its capacity not only for strength, but for compassion, bravery, and unwavering commitment to justice. Dr. Lena Croft, too, reflected on the experience with a mixture of pride and humility. She had witnessed the power of communication, understanding, and empathy in bridging the gap between species. Through her efforts, human technology and knowledge had amplified Illyrian capabilities, creating a foundation for lasting partnership. She realized that the fleet's success was not measured solely in victories or casualties, but in the lives saved, the hope restored, and the relationships forged across an unimaginable divide. As preparations began for the fleet's return journey to Earth, A sense of accomplishment and anticipation filled the crew. The mission had been historic, a testament to human courage and resilience. The Illyrians, now equipped to defend themselves and rebuild their society, expressed their deep gratitude through messages of thanks, gifts of art, and shared scientific knowledge. These exchanges laid the groundwork for continued cooperation, not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals bound by shared experience and mutual respect. The return to Earth was met with celebration, though tempered by the memory of those who had not survived. Families awaited the returning crew, and communities across the planet honored their bravery and sacrifice. Stories of the mission spread quickly, inspiring new generations to look beyond their world and recognize the potential of courage, compassion, and unity. Humanity had ventured into the unknown, faced unimaginable danger, and answered a call for help when few others would. The experience left an indelible mark on both human and Illyrian history. Years later, messages continued to arrive from Illyrian space, expressing thanks, sharing advancements, and offering friendship. These communications were not merely polite gestures, they were evidence of a lasting bond, a partnership forged in the crucible of crisis and conflict. Humanity's reputation as the Deathworlders, once feared across the galaxy for their toughness and resilience, had evolved to include admiration for their courage, empathy, and willingness to act when needed. The legacy of the mission endured, shaping diplomacy, exploration, and interstellar relations for decades to come. The crew, having experienced the full spectrum of war, sacrifice, and hope, returned home changed. They had witnessed destruction on a scale beyond imagination, yet also the profound resilience of life. They carried with them memories of those they had saved, those they had lost, and the lessons of leadership, courage, and compassion. The mission reinforced the belief that humanity, though flawed and untested in many ways, could rise to meet even the most impossible challenges and could leave a lasting positive impact on the galaxy. As Earth watched the stars and remembered the fleet, a quiet understanding emerged. The universe was vast, filled with dangers and unknowns, but also opportunities for connection, trust, and mutual support. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger role among the stars, demonstrating that even in the face of fearsome enemies and impossible odds, courage and compassion could prevail. The Illyrian survival was proof, and the ongoing friendship between the two civilizations became a beacon of hope and inspiration for all who looked to the stars. The story of the Deathworlder fleet answering the Illyrians' call became legend. It was told not as a tale of conquest or dominance, but as a testament to the power of courage, collaboration, and empathy. It reminded humanity that even in a universe filled with danger, the decision to act, to protect, and to stand beside those in need defined who they truly were. In answering the call for help, humanity had not only saved a civilization, they had proven that even across the vastness of space, hope, courage, and friendship could endure, leaving a legacy that would resonate across generations and galaxies for years to come.